Good morning. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about your animal research and how you're going to turn that into an informative essay, a research paper. And the first thing that I want to do in our first step and lesson for learning how to take our research and writing it into an informative essay is I want to go over our rubric because I don't think that we have formally gone over a rubric and what a rubric means. And so for most of you that don't know what a rubric is something that is used to score a task. So one task that you've completed, it's a way to score it for the teacher to show what her expectations are and what grade you will get for the type of work that you turn in and the quality of work. And so it's a really good tool for the teacher to help give her expectations as well as to grade your project or task. But it's also a more important tool for you as a student to be able to know what grade you're going to get because you can look in the column and see exactly what you need to do to get a certain grade. So this is your animal writing rubric for the research paper, your informative writing. And if you notice, your rubric is broken down two different ways. The first way is there are columns, and the columns are labeled. There's a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 4. Now, the 1 is the lowest score that you can get, whereas the 4 is the highest score. So think of a 4 as 100% and a 1 as like a 25% or a 0. And so when you're looking at your rubric, you want to look at the 4 because the 4 is where you are trying to get to on your task. So if we were to look, we have our introductory paragraph, and that's what this first lesson is going to be going over, is your first paragraph. What should your first paragraph have, and what are you going to be graded on? Well, a 4 says it is an introductory paragraph is written with a grabber and introduces the topic. Well, I know that we're going to go over what a grabber is today, and we're going to talk about how we should be introducing our topic. So those are two things that we're going to review in today's lesson. And it also includes the three main ideas of your paper. So you want to make sure that that first paragraph has a grabber, so a really interesting way to start off your paper that makes your reader want to read it. It explains the topic and gives a little bit of hints as to what your paper is going to be talking about. So that is the introductory paragraph, and that is a 4. That's what we're aiming for. Now, we're not going to go over 3 middle paragraphs, concluding paragraphs, or bibliography because we are going to be looking at those in our later steps, as well as the diagram. But we do want to look at conventions because conventions are your spelling, your grammar, your sentences, making sure that they're structured correctly, as well as your paragraph structure. So you want to make sure there are very little or no errors in spelling, grammar, sentence structure, and punctuation. Now this is our draft. So this rubric's not going to be grading your draft. Your draft is not going to be graded on conventions. It's only going to be graded on do you have what the main parts are in the 3 paragraphs. But you will need to know about these conventions because you do want to keep that in mind as you're writing your draft. But you're going to be rewriting and publishing your paper, so conventions aren't so important right now. But just so you can see that to get a 4, you want little or no errors. So when we edit them, we'll touch base back on that. So we know what our requirements are for our introductory paragraph. Let's go ahead and let's talk about some of the things that we're going to need to be able to write our introductory paragraph. The first thing that I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about a grabber or a hook. Now, a grabber or a hook is a really, really interesting way to start out your writing. It's the first sentence of your entire paper, and it's something that's going to grab your reader's attention. So, for example, would you be interested in reading an article that says, the animal that I'm going to talk to you about today is the giant leopard? That's not really interesting. It does tell us what we're going to be talking about or learning about or reading about, but it's not really grabbing the reader's attention. But if you were to start off with, it has spots, claws, large teeth, and eats almost everything, that's kind of like a hint. It's getting your reader wondering, what kind of animal or thing are they talking about? and that's going to grab their attention or hook them into reading your paper. And that's why they're called grabber or hooks. So on the screen, and this is also going to be in your step 1 of your lesson, I'm going to add this in. There are some ideas on how to grab your reader's attention and hook them into reading your book. You could do dialogue. So this is more for stories, but you could start yours off as a research team talking to each other. And dialogues where you're just having people talk back and forth. Asking a question. You could ask a question of your reader that makes them thinking of, oh, I want to be able to answer that question. You could make a snapshot of a small moment. So kind of like I did where I talked about the animal's spots and claws. It's a snapshot of it. A sound effect, automatopoeia. So you could do the sound effect that your animal would make. Action leads, so exciting verbs, something that your animal's doing to grab their attention. Or a flashback, something that's happened in the past. So these are all very interesting ways that you can start off your essay. Are these the only ways? Absolutely not. There's so many different ways, but these are some ideas for you to get started because you are going to have some exciting way to start off your essay. I do not want to read, I'm going to be talking about blank today. Don't ever put that in there. You're going to be writing it, we're going to be reading it, so people are going to know what you're going to be writing or talking about. So you don't need to put that in your first paragraph. Use one of these really exciting grabbers, and I really cannot wait to see some of the grabbers that you guys come up with today. So, on our rubric, if we refer back to it, an introductory paragraph is written with a grabber. So we know what a grabber is and we know how to do that. We need to introduce our topic, and we also need to include the 3 main ideas that we're going to be talking about. So you need to introduce that you're going to be talking about an animal, and you can do that through your grabber by describing it and then saying the cheetah is one of the most fascinating animals. That's a way to introduce what you're talking about. And the 3 main ideas that we're going to be talking about are the physical appearance and family life. We're going to be talking about the habitat and diet, as well as the predators and protection. So you're going to be talking about your animals' adaptations, appearance, their food, how they get their food, and how they protect themselves. So in your introductory paragraph, you want to give 1 to 2 sentences explaining what you're talking about with your animal. You are going to introduce your animal, but you also need to explain what you're going to be talking about. So you could introduce the cheetah and we could have a whole essay on what it looks like, but really we're talking about what it looks like, what it does for protection, and its habitat and its diet. So you can even add in some of these, a fun fact or 2 to get your essay rolling, but you want to make sure that after reading that first paragraph that your reader really knows what you're going to be talking about. And if you look under the first lesson for step 1, it even has what you need to have. So it says, write your first paragraph. Be sure to include the requirements listed below. You need to have a grabber that grabs your reader's attention. You need to clearly introduce your animal, and you need to have listed the main idea or the 3 main ideas or topics of your essay, which are going to be your 3 middle paragraphs, which we're going to talk about in our next lesson. So this is a little bit about your first paragraph. I want you to go ahead and write that first paragraph. Take your time, have fun with it, and reach out to me if you have any questions.